It is I. I have. I'll be back. I mean, I am back after what I don't know. I don't know if it's deserved or not, but after some holidays, like national holidays here at my home country, I'm back talking about what I love the most. Did I say I love the most? That might have been a Freudian slip where I just say what I think, what I really think, but I don't think about it. You know? Welcome everybody to another episode of another casual conversation with me, your friend Carlz, where I take whatever I say in Spanish and take it into the mind blender and then turn it into an English practice full of magic, you could say. So, this week or the week that I come back, as many of my episodes happened, or as many of my episodes are originated as, it was just a casualty, like something that just happened. Basically, I remembered this movie, right? Power Rangers, the 2017 cinematic reboot of the old 90s franchise that, if you grew up in the 90s, you probably know what Power Rangers are. There were like, I guess they tried to make them into the new Ninja Turtles, right? This adaptation of the Japanese, what is the word, tokusatsu, but it's basically superheroes that just regular people, they transform into superheroes and they have weapons and suddenly they know karate or like kung fu. They know martial arts basically, and they kick monsters' ass uh, using their giant robots, whatever. Power Rangers, when it first came out to the West, to our dear Western world, it was a kids show. As I said, to this day, I believe it tried to be the next big thing, and I think in a way it was. Of course, it wasn't as big as uh, Ninja Turtles, right? I think in a kids kind of like age segment, I think nothing has been as big as the Turtles since the Turtles. And nowadays, with the age of the internet and like massive media, there are so many options that I think we will never have something like that. Even nowadays, they have, I don't know, La Bubus and all of those stuff, and I think they can get big, but they will never get as big as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were back in the day. Like, never. Well, Power Rangers wasn't the exception either. Like, they weren't that big, but they were big enough to like leave a legacy, and not only leave a legacy, but leave a legacy of fans, many of whom to this day enjoy the series, which I believe it's still ongoing. So they just bring new series from Japan, they adapt them and whatever. They like put out some new series about, like, I don't know. There were dinosaurs, ninjas, space people, aliens, whatever you want. They had it, right? But this one was an important one. This one was the big sort of attempt to bring the Power Rangers back, like in a big way. What I think about this movie is, like, I haven't seen it since. I mean, I saw it when I wanted to make the episode, right? But I only saw it once before that, and not in the movies. Just when it came out in home video, home video, in home media, whatever. And this is a curious case of updating sort of kids franchises. The thing is, Power Rangers 2017 has this weird distinction, which was my initial kind of like inspiration to rewatch it, is that it's sort of, and I don't wanna, this might sound like a big thing, right? But bear with me. It might have been one of the pioneers on what now we know as the updating of old IPs, or old kids IPs into modern times. Like, to sort of complement a little bit more what drove me to rewatch this movie and talk about it. Uh, is the recent sort of like you might call it a revolution. I feel like it's been ongoing for a long time, but suddenly it became really clear to me all of these revivals of old kids IPs in comic books, Johnny Quest, all of those Hanna Barbera, Space Ghost, the Biker Mice from Mars. Um, what else? I'm probably missing a lot of them. But one in particular that I didn't choose to follow, I sort of like got the curiosity of me to follow it, was Captain Planet. Uh, like a month ago or so, they did another revival of Captain Planet in the comic books. This is published by Dynamite, I think. I don't remember the author. I might have talked about it in my comic book show. The point is, when I read this Captain Planet revival, I sort of opened my eyes into the realization of how formulaic these sort of kids show IP updating have been. If you think back to all of these kids shows, basically it's not a failure. I mean, it's not a problem or an issue. It's not that it's something bad with them, but they were kids shows back then, and kids shows back then were basic, and with basic I mean just bad guys versus good guys, and the characters themselves were just the good guys. Even if you had five characters like in the Power Rangers, like many of them didn't really have like personalities. You could have like this like small and tight spectrum of personalities, like the sporty guy, the what else you have, like the smart guy. But for example, like in the original Power Rangers, between Trini and Kimberly, the Pink Ranger and the Yellow Ranger, the most distinctive distinction between them was their ethnicity, which was kind of like weird. But anyways, back to Captain Planet. So Captain Planet was the same. Basically, the only distinguished or distinctive characteristic of the Planeteers in the original series was where they came from. Like one was from Asia, one was from America, Africa, even the Latino one, right? Mati. He was like from quote unquote South America. They didn't even like make the effort to say like he's from Brazil, Argentina. Like no, he was from South America. So when you put that into a modern context and you get the new Captain Planet, the bare minimum thing that you have to do, and this bare minimum has become like the core or like the essence of these new revivals, is turn the protagonists from sort of token good characters or like good guys into people, right? The thing about turning token characters into people is that it gives you a different array of possibilities. What are you gonna do with these possibilities? In the case of the comic of the Captain America comic, Captain Planet comic, they went into what now it has also become kind of like the standard for these revivals, and they gave them a slightly greedy or conflictive background. And that's kind of obvious, right? Like if I'm gonna update these children's heroes to modern times, like they're not gonna be just like regular guys. I mean, they might, but they're not just. It's not good. It's not good. No, it's not entertaining. Like you can say it's not entertaining, or like it's not entertaining enough just to see some regular guy like becoming a Planeteer or becoming a Power Ranger. Like, no, I don't have any issues. Like, I'm not a millionaire. Like, I'm not poor either. I'm just a regular guy. So here's your chance to excel. That would be quite an interesting take, though. And they have done it in comic book form in several, not IPs, but like several comic books have dealt with that idea, like the common man having a chance to excel. But anyways, they do this update where they turn the characters from token into people, right? And they often go to this sort of dramatic, sort of dark place, you could even say, And this is not inherently bad. It's not, and often it's good. But here's where you take like an editorial choice. How I update my main characters and what do I choose them to represent? In the case of Captain Planet, the comic books, they went deep, and I think that's one of the like the better things about the comics. They took all of them and they sort of took an issue representing their geographical region and made that into the conflict. Like for example, Mati was sort of like a revolutionary, right? Almost a guerrilla, right? Guerrilla warfare type of character, like that sort of conflict. Because the issue with the Amazonas, right, the jungle, or like the conflict that it's in there, it's violent, it's aggressive. So let's make Mati be part of that. That's how we bring him up to today's standards, or like that's how we make him grow up, sort of. So if we take that idea and we come back to Power Rangers 2017, they did that. They did that. What, 2017? Wait, 2020? Is it like 8 years ago? But they did that. They did that. They did that. They chose to make the Rangers, and this is sort of like the core story arc, or like the core idea, right? The Rangers, in this case, they are not just chosen because whatever, like in the original they just found the stuff and they're like, okay, it's time to morph. Here they propose the idea that the morphing grid, which is what gives the Power Rangers their powers, chooses you because you have the potential to overcome like your some like essential conflict or personality issue that you might be going through right now. And of course, the primordial sort of point in each and every one of us lives, right, where we have the conflict and we have the chance to overcome it when we're teenagers, because we don't know shit. And well, some of us sort of like already gave up, some of us went big, I don't know, some of us were lucky enough to find like a successful place in the world, like whatever. So they took these 5 kids and they added them modern day teenage angst. It's not that they didn't exist in the past, but like, so they gave the Black Ranger issues with well, I gotta say that this is the best part. I'm talking about the best part of the movie, or the most interesting part of the movie, and bear in mind it's also the bad part of the movie. So I'm gonna go through each 5 of them and see and explain it. So the Black Ranger is migrant, right? He's an immigrant. He's a Chinese immigrant that has a sick mom that he needs to take care of. He needs to take care of his mom because she's sick and they are immigrants. The base idea for that is good enough. The development of it is not. And this is going to be the standard mistake the movie is gonna make with these characters. It's just not edgy enough. That is a word that might sound a little bit bad, even like, oh, it's not edgy enough. I should be edgy, but no. Like what I wanted to see when I saw the movie the first time and now the second time, I see the seeds of something that could be more intense. So let's jump. Like I'm seeing here my background. So let's jump to the Blue Ranger. He has autism, and he said so. Might as well be one of the first times you actually hear the spectrum in a movie for this age range, right? Because it's still a movie for teenagers. I have even like an idea that on 2017, if somebody said I'm on the spectrum in a movie, 3 out of like 4 or 5 people would have no idea what that means. But this is a kid on the spectrum that, as kids on the spectrum often do, he gets obsessed with the relationship with his dad who passed, right? So his dad passed, and he's obsessed with not only nurturing what they did together, but sort of like the elements of the relationship that bring them together. Again, this is a great base for a character, because these are all issues that the morphing grid is going to challenge them to overcome, right? So this is a great beginning. But again, it falls short. This is all only theories. I mean, not only theories, but only the basis of a character. So let's jump to the Pink Ranger. She's like a popular girl, right? That she sort of like falls out of grace with her girlfriends, and she goes through this phase with this identity crisis, and it's implied that she has self-destructive issues. Like it's implied that she might have not had. Was that okay? I think suicidal thoughts, like self-destructive thoughts, because her identity as a teenager was challenged by the circumstances. That is almost the same that happened with the Red Ranger, right? The perfect kid, like a perfect American white kid, like I don't know, like football. Was he like quarterback or something? Like the perfect one. Turns out that wasn't exactly what he wanted to do with his life, so he lashes out. He lashes out and he fucks up. He fucks up, and he has these issues with his dad, and his dad is one of these really demanding parents, and like, you fucked up your life. But in spoiler, in the end, dad does that because he loves his son, but he's under a regime of toxic masculinity and he doesn't know how to express it. Again, great setup. And then we go to finally to the Yellow Ranger, who is implied that is having some sort of sexual identity crisis. It's heavily implied that she might be on sort of sexual minority, and it's also heavily implied that she's like of like a Latino ethnic background, and like her parents are really restrictive, you know. They do this thing they always do with like Latino families. She has like brothers, and like they are kind of noisy. It's implied that they're religious. Again, these are great bases for all these characters, for them to overcome. So we have like the base up to like sort of the middle of the movie, and the base is great. They find Sordon. They are like even the base, like the more sci-fi part of the plot that it's involved with the what is the name of the power coins, that involves the power coins, Sordon, Rita Repulsa, like basically the big lore of the Power Rangers in the movie. That's also it's also interesting, because while in the more childish version, it's like, okay, Rita and Lord said they're bad and they want to conquer the earth, ha 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 ha. In this version, Rita wants to destroy, and it's also again heavily implied that there was a schism, a breakup in Sordon's Ranger team, and a betrayal. Like this really, I was gonna say like Hamlet, but I don't know Hamlet. I never read it, but like this sort of like big dramatic break between their team, and Rita, who was the Green Ranger, like betrayed them for power and destruction, right? So up to the middle of the movie, that is great. And okay, these kids have like terrible backgrounds. They're gonna come together. They're gonna like find their strength and deal with their issues, and that would eventually allow them to morph into Power Rangers. And then you will have this great metaphor Like you're a teenager, you have issues, but if you challenge enough, and you sort of like stand up to your problems, find yourself, your identity, find I don't know, your sexual identity, deal with the loss of your parents, right? Or like in the case of the Black Ranger, um, what could be an immigrant? But like it's heavily implied that the Black Ranger is into some shady shit, and he might be a crook, or like he might do like some illegal dealings because he has to, right? He's been battered by our dear old friend capitalism. But anyways, how is this a problem, and when is the movie becomes or like sort of like not a failure, but when does the movie starts losing you as an spectator, right? This is my theory. I'm not sure at all, but this is my theory. My theory is that they had like a, how do you call it, like a slider, like a volume slider, like the ones you have here on the recording software. They had a slider, and probably one of the older guys, like Haim Saban, or one of those guys, like the more like, I don't know, old school oriented type of people. They were like, okay, you still have to do a teenage uh, movie, right? It has to be entertaining and everything. You have to put comedy in it. And that is when everything goes to shit. That might be a little bit apocalyptic, but that's sort of the idea. That is where the movie sort of loses its identity. I think the movie, it's like slow burning, it's like a fire. It's slow burning. It's becoming hotter and hotter, and then it spreads out. It's like somebody kicked the embers, and they spread it out all over, and like now it doesn't know anything, because while they had to put in like fights and comedy and to lighten up the mood, that contrast is so heavy, it's so shocking that it takes you out of it like completely. Like we're talking about half from the latter half of the movie, like the third act. Everything begins to happen so fast, and they had to introduce like a comedy, bad guys, some fights, and one of the other bad elements, or like elements that I don't like about the movie, which is the overall designs of creatures and robots. In a big way, all of these elements do not allow the movie to develop its interesting sort of beginning. I'm not sure if it could have been any different. I think this movie falls into that category, like one category that to me happens sadly way too often, and it's a movie that would have been great as a series. It's just not enough runtime for them to develop this concept enough. So they do this thing where in the latter half of the movie, or the third act, everything closes with just one event. I said I wanted to be less spoilery, so I'm not gonna say which event, but let's say you have this one big event that almost as a black hole brings every conflict into one thing and basically ends the whole thing. Doesn't matter which individual sort of issue you had, it doesn't matter anymore. We bring all together into this one moment, and everything is fixed, and then we jump into the climax of the movie. You transform, and then it's just standard action, whatever. And this is the moment to mention the other aspect that I didn't like, right? The designs. So we get into the climax of the movie, and the climax of a Power Rangers movie it's gonna be a climax of a Power Ranger episode, right? You have morphing, you have swords, you have monsters, and you have fights. And this is no spoiler, this is kind of obvious. Let's start with the overall design. What I don't like about it. I think they made a mistake of leaning way too hard into the alien concept of it. If you wanted to update the simple, sort of like whatever, like lighthearted spandex idea of the original ones, they did that in the first movie. Like, I don't know if anyone has seen the first Power Rangers movie, but the suits in that movie were awesome. They were like, okay, uh, it's. I think in this episode I've used the expression heavily implied a lot. It's heavily implied that the original Power Ranger suits, even though they were just spandex, they were that type of armor, right? Like that is what explains the fact that they could fight with monsters and not get hurt. So what they did in the first movie was turn those suits into armor, and it looks great for the times. I think that movie is like 1999 or something. It's a pretty old movie, and it looks fine. And I don't know why they fumbled the ball so bad in this one. And I think it is related to the fact that they went way too hard into the alien concept. And I'm not designer, I'm just some bald guy, right? But like, to me, the cheapest way of tapping into quote unquote alien design is doing these heavily lines everywhere, like everything is made out of pieces of other things, and you end up having like a mishmash of lines and curves, and that is everywhere in this movie. Everywhere, everything seems to be like curves and like a line after a line after a line, and everything is pieces, like the Transformers movie, right? Like the now known as the Bayverse Transformers. Everything is pieces, and it's not that I dislike that design, but I think it's boring. That is the truth. So when they eventually turn into Rangers, they don't even give them cool weapons. And I'm like, and now I'm talking like particularly as a kid that grew up with this shit, and now you see the new shit, and like, why does only the Red Ranger has a like a visible weapon? Back in the day, you would be like, okay, they're gonna do the weapons now. Like the first couple of hundred of times they do that, you go like, okay, here goes a weapon. Where they, if people have not seen it, they each had their own weapons, right? Yellow Ranger had like sais, like knives. Red Ranger had the sword. Pink had the bow. Blue had the spear or a lance. Wait, what's the difference between a spear and a lance? I think you throw a spear and you wield a lance, right? But his has like pointy ends in both sides. That is not a lance, right? Lances do not have pointy ends on both sides. Whatever. And Black had an axe. So in the original series, they would take all of the weapons and fuse them into a big gun, which was cool as hell, right? But now they don't even have weapons. So let's go back a little bit. You have this beginning of the movie, really interesting, really like starting to develop. Okay, you cut it short. Part of you understands they had to cut it short. It's just a movie, right? It's just a 90-minute movie. They don't have to develop all of that. Okay, well, okay, I can take the concept, right? This might be a new aspect of the franchise. Okay, I take it. And then they morph, and they're like, okay, so now we're gonna go crazy. We're gonna go crazy, right? Because in the original, they went hard, even though it looked cheesy like most of the time, because not only it was a 90s show, but I think the original Japanese Power Rangers they were based on was like an 80s show. So it was cheese over cheese. It looked terrible sometimes, but they did their best. They did their best, and the action sequences in Power Rangers 2017, they don't. They just don't. It's short and it's like even sort of boring. It could have been way, way better, and it's even short. So, if we keep going, like tracking the movie, we're reaching the climax, and we've been expecting this as people that know what Power Rangers is about. We've been expecting the fights. We've been expecting the action, and it's sort of short-lived. And you go like, oh, okay, but now the swords are coming out, right? Like, this is what me personally liked the best about the original Power Rangers. As a like robot and mecha enthusiast, that was my favorite part about the Power Rangers. That was what I liked the best. The robots, and like you could go like season after season, and what I wanted to see each and every time was the new robots. I wanted to see the new robots, how they looked, how they like combine into a big one. I wanted to see the robots. Robots was my shit. So you get to the end, and Power Rangers 2017, and the robots sort of look like shit. Not completely, but as I said, the design is carried over and it just doesn't look good. Like they said that they are representations of the most powerful creatures when Sordon's ship crashed on Earth. So since it crashed during the age of the dinosaurs, that is the explanation in the movie to why the swords look like dinosaurs, because they were the most powerful creatures when the ship crashed on Earth. And the only one that sort of looked like it is like the Tyrannosaurus Rex for the Red Ranger, but for some reason they made it hella small. So the dimensions are weird and the robots themselves are weird. They do this like this small gesture of making them fight before combining into the Megazord, which is also something that everybody is expecting. And again, it's underwhelming. So we're talking about 2 out of 3 fight moments that are underwhelming. The on foot fight with the Rangers, it's underwhelming. Oh, side note to the party, like again, for people that don't know the Power Rangers, the main grunts, the bad guys, right? The main grunt bad guys were called the Putty Soldiers, I think, or Putty Warriors. I don't know, but they were made out of putty. That's what the whole thing. So in the movie, Rita makes them out of rocks, and they look like shit. Like they basically look like a bunch of rocks put together. So they look awful. So 2 out of 3 moments, hand-to-hand combat, and then sword combat. So we make a parenthesis here to talk about the main antagonist, not Rita, but she wants to create Goldar to destroy Earth, to steal a crystal and use Earth's energy. So she creates Goldar. For all of us that knew the original, Goldar was one of, I think, second in command or something, but he was one of Rita's main henchmen, or hench monkey in this case, and he was a gold monkey with wings that made awful jokes, had a short temper, right? And he had a big sword. I think the sword even had like a heart on it, right? But that's a cool design, like a flying monkey with a sword. That's cool. So what's Goldar in Power Rangers 2017? Like a blob, like a gold blob. It's terrible. It's so awful, ugly, and it's just bad. So here's Goldar, and he's called Goldar because he's made out of gold. Big deal. Fuck. So again, this is not a spoiler because it's Power Rangers. Of course, the climax of the final fight is big as Goldar against the Megazord. And again, the Megazord looked like shit. All of this is sort of like traditional, unchallenging, like like generic, like superhero fight. Like there's nothing noteworthy about the whole third act of the movie. The designs are terrible. The action is mediocre. Even the little Go Go Power Rangers theme song cameo is like forced on. It's like, okay, just put the damn song here because everybody is waiting for it. Like Go Go Power Rangers, and there it is. Fuck it. And that is how we reach sort of like the main idea, or like the main issue with this movie. It's such a contrasting movie. It had so much potential. And I don't know if it was intentional, if the producers made it, if Haim Saban and whatever the other fucking guy's name is. I don't know if they brought it down. I don't know. Perhaps they aimed too high. I remember reading that they were expecting this to be a movie franchise. Perhaps that would have given more time for these characters to be something else. But nothing of that happened. And in the end, you got a product that really didn't get the chance to shine. And that is why I put the movie more in a good light than a bad light. I think I think the ideas were right. That's why I mentioned Captain Planet and all of the revivals of all kids IP. That's why I mentioned them, because now we sort of take that as a given on how to update these franchises. And even though it's a given, even though it's kind of like something common that it's done, it's what it has to be done. Like if you take this sort of like potpourri of teenagers that Power Rangers 2017 proposed, it is the potpourri of Rangers that you need. It is. You have ethnic minorities, you have migrants, you have potentially like I don't know, psychological issues, people on the spectrum, social commentary on toxic masculinity with Red, like possible inclusive no inclusion elements or queer elements on Yellow. You have a bunch of shit that is what it needs to be. It needs to be like that. That is the correct, to me, or like the most appropriate update of these teen shows into modern times, because these are today's teenagers basically. That's what it that that's what it is. So the idea was there, and it's even a little bit sad that it didn't turn out to be better. Of course, as the saying goes, hindsight is a B word, right? Hindsight is bad. And of course they it could have been better, but it also could have been even worse. But that is a moot point by now. The point is, I wanted to talk about this movie to give it the credit it deserves, because it does deserve some credit. It does deserve its idea to be recognized. It does deserve uh, its potential to be recognized. Again, it's a moot point right now. I mean, probably they're gonna do some revival soon-ish, or like in the future. I don't know. I don't even know if there is current ongoing Power Ranger series. Like the last one I even saw, it's like more than 10, 15 years ago. I don't know. The last one I sort of watched a little bit was one in space, in time. I think it was the one with the cool song, like Time Force, Time Force. Um, but whatever the case is. One final comment about it is that they also, it's not a reboot, but like They also released Power Ranger comics. These are like from Boom Studios, I think, and they have been ongoing for a couple of years. That was something that I was going to do during my Spanish episode. I mentioned that I don't know what's going on with the Power Ranger comics, and I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna look it up and see what's going on with the Power Ranger comics, and I completely forgot. But when they released the new Power Ranger comics, it did really well. They dealt a lot of with like classic comic book tropes, alternative timelines, and whatnot, and like the biggest sort of takeaway of the Power Rangers comic revival was the evil Green Ranger, right? They did this alternative future, but they tried to do in a very comic book like manner. What they did with this revival was to expand the Rangers lore, and they created this big fictional play world to to mess around with the Power Rangers, right? A lot of shit about Eltarians and the morphing grid. They did this thing. It got too big, big sci-fi, like display of things, whatever. But there wasn't really enough space for the characters. One of the breakthrough characters was the Ranger Hunter, I think it was an alternative future of the Pink Ranger, where she was commanded to hunt other Rangers. So it was all very comic booky, very sci-fi, but none of all of the storylines shown in the current Power Rangers comic book, none of them tapped into real teenager issues as Power Rangers 2017 tried to do. So there you go. It went even harder than the comic books. That's it. Well, it's sad because, as I said now a couple of times, this is a moot point. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I think this movie is worth a watch. If you grew up with Power Rangers, or if you are, I don't know who else could be interested in this movie. Maybe a minimum curiosity. I think the Yellow Ranger now is like a famous singer or something. Maybe fans of her. I don't know. Well, he has the dad from Malcolm in the Middle as Sordon. So I don't know who would be interested in this movie as I did, but I did because I wanted to, in my small corner of the internet, recognize that it was a well thought out movie with a poor execution and a lost potential, basically. A big lost potential that could have been great. Like, even the Chinese dude, even he doesn't even speak Chinese to his mom. I think the mom speaks to him in Chinese, and he doesn't reply in Chinese. They could have gone into like, oh, I'm ashamed of being a migrant, right? And now, like, with the current state of the world, like doing a commentary on immigration, in recognizing psychological diversity, dude, it's all there. It's all there. It's frustrating that it didn't did better, or like it's frustrating that it's just gonna be remembered like as this mediocre Power Ranger movie, which it is, but okay, who knows. Anyways, that is my time. Now I'm just sort of like uh rolling around into the what ifs, right? And into this, oh, I wish this and that, I wish and that, and it's not worth it anymore. This might inspire me to check out current Power Rangers like series if they are on. Though I said the same in my Spanish episode, and then I completely forgot because I don't give a shit what the Power Rangers are doing right now, or like what the current series are. I don't really care, but like perhaps they tapped into this small idea, this small ember of a revolutionary idea that was Power Rangers 2017. Who knows? All I know is that I won't know because I won't look it up. Maybe. I don't know. But anyways, thank you again for... Wait, let me sip some tea. I mean some water. Ah, thank you again for listening to me, for giving me a chance to explain my ideas. I hope everybody that is mildly interested in give this movie a chance. Otherwise, we'll see you next time with another talk on another topic called movies. Thank you all for listening, and the power is feed the power, be the power, Power Rangers. Is that what they say? I don't know. Bye bye.